ask everybody to mute themselves.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock and I'd like to begin the meeting. My name is Bob O'Brien. I am Director of Economic Development for the City of Revere, and it's been my privilege to moderate the Development Advisory Group process for the Riverfront Master Planning since the DAG was convened in November, and over the course of the several weeks and months that the Riverfront Master Plan was evolved. I think everyone acknowledges it as a rather remarkable document that covers Gibson Park and all of the public and private properties that surround Gibson Park, and has a number of dimensions, particularly including improved engagement of the Riverfront district to the waterfront and improvements on Gibson Park and some of the public and private properties surrounding it. Since last we met in late January, the Revere Planning Board has unanimously adopted the Riverfront Master Plan, and the City Council approved a Riverfront Overlay Zoning District that allowed for the possibility of a proposal to be developed and presented for mixed-use residential development of the G&J site, which is now, as you know, a salvage and tow yard. The purpose of this meeting is to focus on that particular aspect of the Riverfront Master Plan as a whole. So we will be looking at the proposal for the development of the G&J site in that larger context, but we will be focusing our attention specifically on the details of the proposal that has now emerged and was discussed only in general and conceptual terms in the Riverfront Master Planning process itself. The presentation will be made today as expected by the Redgate development team, which worked with us through the master planning process and is now prepared to discuss in great detail the elements of the development plan that they are now proposing. All of this is being done pursuant to the requirement that any such proposal, which is still a proposal and has not yet begun the permitting process, be presented to the community before the Revere permitting process begins. That will happen with the formal presentation to the Revere Site Plan Review Committee that is likely to take place later this month or early next month. And all of the comments and questions and observations that will be shared in this meeting will be provided for the review and comment of the Site Plan Review Committee before they begin their process. I would also note that several members of the Site Plan Review Committee, as well as other members of the Planning Board and the City Council, are in attendance, but the Site Plan Review Committee particularly will have the opportunity to hear firsthand the comments of the community. There will be ample time for questions and answers. I would suggest, however, that to the extent possible, we provide the Redgate development team the opportunity to outline the proposal before the questions and answers begin. It's expected that will probably take approximately 30 minutes, so there will be well over an hour, close to an hour and a half for questions and answers. As has been the case in the past, all of these meetings are being televised on Revere TV and are open to the public. For those in the webinar that want to ask questions, you can see the opportunity to raise your hand and you will be acknowledged. For those who would prefer to do it in non-orally, there is a Q&A feature that allows you to type in the question that you would like to have asked. I would also note that this is meeting is being translated in Spanish. And if you want to listen to the meeting in Spanish, you can click on the interpretation logo that's at the bottom of your screen. So I think it should be a very productive and informative meeting, one that we and the community have been waiting for. And without further ado, I will turn the meeting over to Damian Zari and his development team from Redgate. Damian, if you're there, please take it away.
Thank you, Bob, and members of the advisory board and residents of Revere, thank you for your time tonight. As Bob mentioned, we're going to be going through a lot of details of the project, and before I hand it over to the design team to really focus on the visuals and the specifics of the projects, I wanted to take some time to really address some of the key concerns that I've personally heard and that we've heard through other public meetings. With that, David, could you pull up the presentation, please? If you just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We put together a list of probably right around 10 kind of key concerns that we've heard, and we'll be addressing and talking about these concerns kind of throughout the presentation, but I did want to address them up front and talk about them. There's been a lot of misinformation out there, and I just think it's important to at least get the points out that we can kind of further address a little bit later on. And I'm just going to kind of work my way through this list, and there's actually 2 pages. The first thing I wanted to talk about is who's going to live in this proposed project. So as people know, this is a proposed 291 unit mixed-use project with retail at the base. And some of the questions we've heard, I've heard some pretty negative undertones, socioeconomic undertones on who's going to be living here. One resident even suggested that the people living in this building would be breaking into cars in the Point of Pines, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The people who are going to be living here are renters by choice, not renters by necessity. And what I mean by that is they're making a decision to live in a building such as this for a lifestyle decision. They're looking for the amenities, they're looking for the services, hassle-free living. And it's going to be very consistent with what the people along the beach are. And so in essence, we're estimating an average household income of about $150,000. When you compare it to our other projects in Revere, our One Beachmont project, which has slightly a lower rent than the stuff on the beach, has an average household income of about $145,000. Our 500 Ocean Avenue project, where Drift and Fine Line is, that average household income is roughly $155,000. And we think the demographic profile here is going to be, roughly, a mix of young professionals, singles and young couples, as well as empty nesters with an average household income of about $150,000. We've heard some concerns about, families with a lot of children, school-age children. That just won't be the case. The high rent here is an economic barrier for families renting these units with school-age kids. And that's proven out by the other projects on the beach. There are no school-age children being generated by these projects. In terms of building height, just kind of working my way down, there's been a lot of discussion about building height, and I think a lot of it is stemming from a comment that Councillor Powers made during a public meeting. He made a comment that the proposed building is going to be 10 feet taller than the existing building. He was actually informed by the city that the existing building was 50 feet tall. The city made an estimate. That building is actually 45 feet tall. Councillor Powers then just made a logical assumption that a 6-story building, which has always been planned, is 10 feet per floor, and that's actually not the case. Typical floors are 10'8", and then when we have amenities in the top floor, those are slightly larger. So the building that we're actually proposing is just under 70 feet. It's 6 stories, as it always has been. And then that building actually tapers down in height, which the design team will walk you through as it approaches the Point of Pines neighborhood. I think, more importantly, it's understanding the distance of this building from the homes in Point of Pines. The closest home in Point of Pines from this building is approximately 600 feet away. That's 2 football fields away. And as it relates to the Riverside neighborhood, the closest home is roughly 900 feet away. If anyone's interested in trying to understand what that height really means, our project at One Beachmont is a 6-story building of similar height. Please take a drive by there. And just imagine it a lot further away. That building sits close to the road, and this building would be much more significantly further away. We've also heard concerns about construction impacts and what it's going to be like while this building is under construction. I just want to assure you that all activities are going to comply with the City of Revere noise ordinance. And then some of the heavier activities, specifically the subsurface foundation work, we're going to be driving piles, which are necessary for this building. And there's been concern about vibration. We're going to be installing seismographs at the perimeter of the property, but the vibrations that are going to be generated from these piles don't go any further than 100 feet. And so obviously with the closest homes, 600 to 900 feet away, we don't see there's going to be any issues, but we're going to take every precaution in order to help protect that. In addition, the property is going to be baited in terms of a rodent control program per city standards. And then, in terms of construction vehicles, there are going to be no construction vehicles going through either the Riverside or the Point of Pines neighborhood. All construction access is going to be off of Route 1A. And then, we're committed to working site. There are deliveries, insurance adjusters who arrive, visitors who arrive. But for the purpose of that analysis, we assume that the traffic was zero. And then based upon state requirements, we made an assumption that every single residential unit generates 5.44 trips per day. So that means every single unit goes in and out 5.44 times, which is a very, very high threshold and something that is not actual, but it was meant to provide a conservative analysis. Our analysis also didn't factor in the actual parking provided on site or any transportation demand measures that we're going to be providing, including the private commuter shuttle that's going to be running only from the building and to the Wonderland train station. And overall, even with this conservative analysis, we still didn't trigger the MIPA threshold for daily trips. And overall, our impact on Route 1A is anticipated to be approximately just a 1% increase. David, could you switch the page? Some of the other comments that we heard were that there were some very specific comments that we are actually going to be negatively impacting the water quality. That couldn't be further from the truth. The land is currently an industrial use. We're going to be cleaning up the land and cleaning up the soil. But currently when it rains on that site is completely impervious. All of the water actually sheets off into the Saugus and Pines River, and it carries any chemicals or any fluids that may have dripped out of the cars that are being stored there or out of the machinery. What we're actually going to be doing is actually treating that water. The first thing we do is we infiltrate the water into the site, and we do that through porous pavement, porous pavers, rain gardens, landscaped areas, and then we treat it before it's released into the Saugus and Pines River. So we're going to actually be improving the water quality. And from an emission standpoint, we're going to be removing a fleet of large-scale diesel trucks that currently service that site as well as machinery. So the emissions are actually going to go down with the site. In terms of environment and habitat, we've also heard some comments that we're going to be endangering wildlife and at the same time potentially destroying natural habitat. We're actually doing the opposite. A big portion of our MIPA filing has to do with what we can do and can't do in order to improve. And our goal is to try to improve the shoreline, improve the habitat. Right now, if you go to the site, you'll notice that there's a lot of debris at the water's edge. There's asphalt that's coming over into the water's edge. Our goal is to actually rebuild that for a big portion of the shoreline. Our goal is to install a new vegetated slope and plant it with native species. This is going to help strengthen just the overall coastal ecology and obviously support the local fauna, and then also help reduce kind of the vulnerability for erosion. As many of you know, Rumney Marsh is home to at least 5 species that are listed by the state as either endangered, threatened, or of special concern. And our improvements are going to help with the help of that habitat, improving that habitat. One of those species is actually the common tern. And there's a priority habitat for the common tern, not directly on our site, but just off of our site, closer to the General Edwards Bridge. And we're going to be helping to preserve and enhance that priority habitat. And also, there's also a very small section of salt marsh that has started to develop on the edge of the site, really bound by asphalt. Our intention is to obviously preserve and help that salt marsh grow and enhance that. So just kind of moving further down, in terms of utility infrastructure, we've heard concerns that our project is going to negatively impact the services to the neighborhoods. And what we're actually going to be doing is improving those services. In terms of domestic water, we're going to actually be installing a new water main that's going to connect the existing water mains that currently service Point of Pines and Riverside. And by connecting them, we're creating a looped connection, and that loop connection is going to actually help with water pressure for both neighborhoods. In terms of wastewater, all of the wastewater that currently comes out of Point of Pines and Riverside goes to a pumping station located at 70 Linway. We're currently working with the city right now on evaluating modifications in order to, basically better accommodate both the existing flow and the increase in flow. And then in terms of gas service, we're actually taking kind of a forward-thinking step. We're not going to be utilizing gas in this building. As many of you know, some municipalities have actually started banning new gas connections. We ended up actually converting one of our projects, Ryder, to all electric as well. And we're doing that in the anticipation that the strength of renewables is going to be growing over time. And if you design a building for gas use, it's very difficult to convert it back. So we're actually taking the step to actually make this an all electric building. And we're actually also studying a number of passive house feasibilities in order to see what we can do in order to try to implement some of that. Flooding on the top page on the right has also been a concern. How is this project going to potentially impact the neighborhood? And ultimately, everything that we're doing is going to lead to increased resiliency for both Point of Pines and for the Riverside neighborhoods. By statute, we're not allowed to adversely impact our abutting properties. The existing condition, as I mentioned when I was talking about, environmental aspects, is almost fully paved. At what we're going to do is by introducing these rain gardens, by introducing porous pavement and porous pavers, increasing the landscape areas, we're actually going to help, stormwater infiltrate into the ground. And then we're also designing the site that all of the stormwater is going to actually pitch away from the Point of Pines neighborhood and also from Riverside. And this isn't done by anything too drastic. I've heard some crazy terms in terms of how high we're going to be bringing the site up. Our existing grades are really going to get adjusted by only between 0 and 2 feet in order to accomplish this. And ultimately, this is going to help both neighborhoods. On top of that, the improvements that we're doing at the coastal bank are also going to help in terms of flooding events as well, too. And, the last topic I wanted to touch upon was something that I know is very important to the resident of Point of Pines, which is protecting private beach access. And I guess what I want to stress and what I want to make everyone aware of, and you'll see some visuals about this, is that we're actually constructing our own multi-million-dollar waterfront. That waterfront is going to be fully publicly accessible. It's going to include active programming. We're going to be improving the shoreline with a boardwalk along the water's edge. We're going to be inviting all of Revere to come here and to experience, hopefully, this new waterfront. On top of that, our building is going to actually have a number of private amenities for the residents that are water related. In addition to a pool and outdoor lounging and gaming areas associated with that pool, we're going to have open air showers, as well as these kind of exclusive cabanas, in the base of our building facing the waterfront as well, too. And on top of that, we're committed to working with the residents of Point of Pines and also the Point of Pines Beach Association on talking and figuring out, what other mitigation measures we're able to actually implement. So those are really kind of the 10 topics. And like I said, we'll be discussing these further throughout the presentation. And we're obviously happy to take questions at the end of the presentation as well. So with that, I just want to turn it over to the Arrow Street team. Oh, excuse me, sorry. And then in terms of permitting, let me take this one. So we're actually just at the beginning stage of our permitting process. As Bob mentioned initially, the comments that are going to come from tonight's meeting are all going to be given to the site plan review. On top of that, at the local level, we also have to go through a Conservation Commission process. We also have a number of state permits that we're going to be acquiring. our MIPA permit, which is currently in process. We're going to be applying for a Chapter 91 license, and then also a permit through the Coastal Zone Management. In addition to the state permits, we're also going to be subject to federal permits related to the Army Corps of Engineers, and also a water quality certificate, which is going to be issued by the EPA, the federal EPA. So tonight is really just the start of a very long permitting process, and all of these steps actually have public comment and public hearings associated with them. So we hope you join for those, and we hope you can answer any additional questions you may have. And with that, I'll pass it on to David. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. I did want to mention at the start of this, we have a number of our team here tonight. You're going to hear from both me and Amy from Arrow Street. Christina Wilson from Copley Wolf, our landscape architect, will be presenting some of the site features. And we also have Brian Bizel from Howard Stein Hudson and Katie Cruz from Hancock Civil Engineers, Traffic and Civil, to answer any questions that you might have as well. This first slide just kind of talks about the site, and I'm sure you all know the G&J site, but it's made up of 3 distinct parcels. So there's the larger site we call Lot 1 that the existing facility is on. It also stretches across a long linear site that includes the pier, identified here as Lot 2, and a small site that has a building on it right now, Lot 3 up against 1A. In between there's a parcel, a land owned by National Grid. That's a piece of property that is access and public parking and landscaping is on that, no building. All of the building is actually on Lot 1, which is quite a ways away from 1A. Overall, bird's eye view of the site. And you can see how those parcels, the sort of uplands portions of the parcels are highlighted in yellow. Damien mentioned the existing conditions of this site. From an environmental perspective, it's not great right now. So it's really, there are a number of cars on the site. I think that we counted cars in an aerial photograph of about 165, if I'm not mistaken, in the parking lots and in the tow yard. There's a dilapidated structure that actually we were told that the reason that the boat is on that structure was to keep people off of it because it was a fairly dangerous spot. You can see some of the areas where asphalt has been poured right up against the shoreline to kind of strengthen the edge. It's not a very environmental condition. And then you can see some of the other areas where the riprap and granite blocks are kind of in disrepair. All in all, this project is looking at almost 900 feet of shoreline repair, and that includes a lot of, as Damien mentioned, habitat restoration, vegetated slope, and just overall shoreline improvements. This is something that many of you have seen a number of times. It's the master plan, and the plan of the building that you see here is the plan we'll talk about a little bit more, but it really is intended to fit within this master plan, to work with the master plan and enhance the work that's being done there. Damien mentioned the distance from the residence. We thought it'd be helpful to have this graphic. So if you look at the outermost circle, that's 800 feet. There's still some distance to get to the residents of Riverside, and you can see Point of Pines is in the 600 foot range, the 500 to 600 foot range. And again, those are Route 1A in that area is bermed up, so that's not even so visible across that way. We wanted to illustrate shadows for the site. The building, as has been mentioned, is about 70 feet, just under 70 feet tall. And at the equinox, you can see where the shadows are at the end of the day. So we're getting to about 1A. Obviously, when the sun gets at its very lowest, shadows get longer, but that's a very short period of time. These are the normal times of the day. So we did summer and the equinox. Sorry, we had
This should have played.
we have a graphic animation of sort of talking about the build-up and the design decisions that went into the form of the building. We can talk about it a little bit. If we can get the animation, that would be great. But the building form itself, looking at the site and looking at the site constraints, we wanted a building that didn't have long, unbroken facades. So there's a fair number of bends in the building. And then to enhance that even further, we looked at some areas and tried to determine where we could create some notches and some cuts in the building. Sorry, we're going to try to go back and see if technology is great when it works. Here we go. So here's the existing site. As we mentioned, here's the footprint. And this is sort of a more extruded mass. And we started to look at views and how to break down that mass, how to pull the massing out at the base to make a more active front for that connection between Gibson Park and the pier. And then how to really situate this building as a piece of the landscape. You can see the green roofs that we have on the sloped roof. And again, the notches that are really bringing the building height down to about 40 feet at the lowest points.
And perceptually, this is really important because as you move around the site and you approach it from 1A, both from the north and south, it begins to break down the buildings so that they begin to appear like separate buildings and start to fit into the park better.
I will say we're still working on materials as well, and we'll be presenting those to the site plan review. But we're using materials as well to break up the mass even further. So, and you'll see in some of the renderings, you'll see how the building doesn't appear to be one large project.
So as part of this presentation and the landscape component, we really wanted to focus on the public realm, talking about the roundabout and that gateway into Gibson Park, the boardwalk and the promenade going around and connecting Gibson Park around to the edge of the waterfront and really reconnecting people to the waterfront. And then what we're calling the Point, which is an amazing experience, which is currently totally closed off to the public. You basically stand on this point. You can kind of experience it if you're down at Gibson Park, right on the beach right there. But really to celebrate this moment as a place where you can really look back to the city. It's a quiet place. It's we're thinking of how we can activate it with retail at the base of the building, and then really kind of sit there, enjoy the sunset, be able to have a series of amenities. We have a Bocce Court there, along with some reclaimed granite steps that we're going to get into and would love to show you and get kind of feedback on as we get through the rest of the slides.
Yeah, and we'll show you an image coming up, but it is important that we did purposely put the retail out at that area because we think that it has a great connection to Gibson Park and it provides an amenity that is unlike anything else. This is a sort of a rooftop view of the site, and you can see some of those elements that we were talking about. So number 2 is the boardwalk that connects, from some public parking out at the Point towards the pier, all the way over to Gibson Park and then beyond to the future boathouse. Number 5 is the rowing center. I'm sorry. Number 5 is the Point. 7 is where we're identifying the green roofs and then the courtyard inside. We did want to illustrate the parking because we wanted to be clear about that. There's about 200 spaces, almost 200 spaces under the building. And then we have 103 spaces, resident spaces out in the area where there's parking currently. However, this is much more heavily landscaped parking than it currently exists. There are 15 public pier parking spaces. And then the parking that you see closest to the new roundabout, the new entry, that would be Gibson Park parking. That's not counted in any of these numbers. It's not finalized, but it's additional parking for the master plan.
So just to zoom in on those three areas, what we'll be focusing on is that the roundabout, the new gateway to Gibson Park, the boardwalk, and then the point.
So the first piece is a piece that we talked about quite a bit in the master planning process, this idea of moving the traffic out of the Riverside neighborhood and allowing better access to Gibson Park from 1A. So this would mean that, traffic does not have to go through either of the residential neighborhoods, either Point of Pines or Riverside, to get to Gibson Park or this development. The roundabout design is something that Howard Stein Hudson is working with Mass DOT to reconfigure the ramps, take back some of the infield area of the large exit ramps that exist today, that can be then converted to both park use, parking, and potentially public art. Here's a conceptual view of what we have, and you can see how we're linking these spaces with pathways for bikes and pedestrians. We're also illustrating how the building is actually broken down. You can see the cut in the building that brings the scale of the building down. You can see the various materials that we have and the bends in the building that reduce the scale. The boardwalk is a very important element both to the master plan and also to this project. It's really reclaiming that edge of the water that for the past however many years, for quite a long time, has been relegated to parking and wrecked cars. So this is a 20-foot wide public boardwalk with active uses on one side and the water on the other. Christine's going to talk a little bit about some of the landscape and design approaches here.
Thank you, David. So yes, I'm Christine Wilson, a landscape architect with Copley Wolf Design Group, and I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight to present to you what I would say is one of the, if not the signature feature of this project, a multi-million-dollar boardwalk. David hit on that's like 20 feet wide. It's also like 400 feet long. So you see the pictures down in the bottom left of folks biking and walking along similar boardwalks. So we're really excited about this feature that connects Gibson Park around what we call the point, up around to the pier. We imagine it to be very activated. We're designing it to be very activated with places to sit, but also outdoor fitness. I think Amy is pointing right to the step bleachers outside the fitness room and the kind of porch space off of the yoga room. And then moving a little further to the left, some benches with well, actually, if we move on to the next page, we'll be able to see kind of what we're imagining these benches to be right there in that image that Amy's pointing to. So a variety of seating with some bags, just very dynamic that, again, brings people to this space to hang out, look out over the water, and move around and interact and socialize. The boardwalk will be comprised of pavers, as Damien hinted or mentioned earlier in the presentation, as well as that vegetated slope that both Damien and David talked to. We're very excited to be working with the civil engineer and the marine engineer to sculpt a very naturalized slope and create habitat, as well as just beautiful planting for everyone to look at as they're biking and walking by the space. There's the boardwalk railing. There's this moment where there's this guardrail where you get to go out and you get to be right up close to the water. So that kind of section the changes as you move along the boardwalk from the right hand, the pier side of the project, around the building entry, all the way up to the point.
So there's a view of what that boardwalk will look like, and you can see kind of the interaction of the residential building with the boardwalk, with the public seating. one of the things that we are excited about is that the boardwalk itself is all pervious pavement, which will help with stormwater management. And obviously the change to the vegetated slope will help with resiliency along the shoreline as well. The final piece we want to talk about is the point. Amy touched on it a little bit, and I'll let Christine talk about some of the details.
Right. So Amy mentioned that Bocce Court. So you can see a photo of it in the lower left, as well as kind of where it's highlighted on the plan. She also mentioned the salvage, seawall stone seating, which we're imagining to stack it, maybe integrate salvage wood into the seating as well, to bring up some height to again look out, get some views. There's a lawn area where you can sunbathe, read a book, hang out, just some additional lawn space, and you'll see there's a paving transition from the permeable pavers, the porous pavers that David just talked about, to stabilized stone dust, and we have trees kind of located in the space as well to provide some shade and just kind of a roof to the space to frame the space. This programming very much complements the programming of Gibson Park. There's an image we have of kind of the park connection. So these two spaces really flow together, and it also complements the interior programming, that retail space that Amy was talking about earlier.
Yeah, so our retail space is located kind of at the tip of the building as well. This is very similar to a lot of the other projects in Riviera, where we've got Drift and the tap room and these restaurant spaces that really activate the lower level of the building. And we really imagine this as kind of this amazing hangout point. You stand there, you sit there on the lawn, you grab a bocce ball and you play bocce with your friends, and you watch the sunset. Some kind of phenomenal views back to the city of Boston from this point. And for us, reading about the history of Point and Pines and realizing that, there was once this whole promenade that just, encircled that whole area, being able to bring that back and bring people back to the waterfront, from Gibson Park, and really feel like you're extending the park all the way around this site and this building is just a phenomenal opportunity. So I'm really excited by it.
We see this as an opportunity for both art and potential programming. And it's really, we're in the early stages, and we're trying to work through and open for ideas about what that art and programming should be. So that's an overview of the project, and we're really interested in feedback and questions. And as I mentioned, we have traffic and civil here as well.
Damian, do you have additional comments you want to make on such matters as unit count, unit mix, etc.?
To which specific questions, Bob? I mean, shouldn't we take some questions from the advisory group first?
Yeah, so I would suggest we take the questions from the advisory group, as we've done in the past. So this is the chance for the advisory group to raise their hand, and we will call on them as they raise their hand. And then we will move over to the attendees. For the attendees, I see hands popping up. I'm writing down your name as I see your hand raised, and we will call on you after we take the questions from the design advisory group. And our first question is from Robert Mara. So Mr. Mara, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Damian, I had a question about the parking. You cited 500 Boulevard as the most comparable site, and I think you said that the parking ratio there was 0.98 per unit. How does that compare with the actual use of the parking lot at the building?
Sure. So just to clarify, I brought up 3 buildings, Bob. One Beachmont 500 and Beach House. I said Beach House is probably the most comparable, actually, because it's the furthest away from transit.
Right.
And in essence, the ratios that I provided were actual utilization ratios, not permitted parking ratios. So a project like One Beachmont was permitted to a 1.2 ratio. 500 Ocean was permitted to 1.35. Both of those are using about 0.7, 0.78, 0.77. And then the Beach House, which is further away from transit, was also permitted above a 1.0. I don't know their exact number. I'm assuming it was probably close to 1.3 or something like that. And they're actually only using 0.98. So all of these buildings are sitting on hundreds of spaces, hundreds of unused spaces, and these buildings are full.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Our panelists, or city council members have any questions or concerns about what you've seen already tonight?
I do, Councilor Powers.
Hey, Council Powers, you have the floor.
Beach House, the ratio is actually 1.7. Okay, they have 234 units and approximately 350 parking spaces in that facility. And correct, yeah, they're not utilizing the full complement of parking, but that's basically what they have there. I have a question on the parking. We're talking about 300 units, I believe. And we're also talking about tandem parking. Does that mean that they have 150 actual parking spaces and they're going to use the other 150 to get to the 1 ratio? They're going to use the other. Is that, am I correct, Damon?
No. If David could go back to the parking plan, we can show you exactly. There's a very small section of the parking within the garage. So in essence, what we're providing is 302 parking spaces for 291 units. There's a very small section, and David can show you at the bottom of the slide right here. And that constitutes about, how many spaces in total, David, would that be?
I believe we have about 20 spaces total that are tandem.
Yeah, and so in essence, a number of, let's say if a 3-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit needs 2 parking spaces, they would get a tandem space, but it's not all the spaces. And then on top of that, there's 103 spaces outside, which are all single parking spaces as well.
So basically we have 280 spaces, am I correct? Am I correct in assuming there's 280 plus parking spaces?
No, there's 302 with about 20 of them being tandem.
Yeah, I was saying taking those away. Go ahead.
Yeah, taking them away. Yeah, if you take 20 tandem spaces away, then yeah, that's closer to that number.
I'm all set.
This is Frank Stringy. I on what John Powers is getting at. Out of the 302 parking spaces, are you designating a certain number of spaces for visitor parking?
Yeah, the idea would be we have some additional parking spaces. Hasn't been fully designated, but where you see, Frank, the 15 public pier parking spaces, there's also some other parking spaces that are actually outside of Chapter 91 jurisdiction. The idea was that we would be designating some of those spaces as visitor parking as well. And obviously, we're not done with all the site plan stuff, but yeah.
Right. Thank you.
So, Damien and Arrow Street, we also have a question regarding, if we don't have any other panelist questions, I want to address the question from one of our attendees who's asking a question about the traffic. So I'm going to pull that up. And so the question was, it was from Richard D. Martino. It was regarding traffic. So right now, it's about comparing the 1,500 cars a day to what could be at the site. So I think Brian, I know Bazel is on the call, and he can explain a little bit more. Damien, you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
I mean, if Brian could address any specific traffic questions, that would be great.
Yes, the comment from Richard, evening everyone, sorry about that. The comment from Richard Diamartino was, it says, regarding traffic for G&J, you're comparing 1,500 cars a day. So I believe what he's saying is that the existing site, when it's fully operational, has about 1,500 cars a day. Because of COVID, we and the operations weren't fully active at the time. We didn't count the existing use in and out of the driveway. So on our filings, we assumed 0 trips were in and out of the existing site every day, which obviously isn't the case, but it's a very hard land use to try to estimate. And because we weren't going to get accurate data via account, again, we just assumed 0 because the trip generation for the MIPA process of the trip generation of our building didn't necessitate us having net trips to take out.
So I think what Brian means by that is we took a very conservative approach. We didn't try to adjust for existing trips. We basically said there are no trips coming out of there. And we took the full, I don't want to use the word penalty, but the full extreme on the other side in order to do a conservative analysis.
And I'm going to move it back if that satisfies Richard's question, hopefully it does. But I'm also going to pick it back over to Paula Gembio, who is one of our panelists tonight. So Paula, please go and ask your question that you have.
Sure. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this presentation. I know you said that the point and the boardwalk and the Bocce Court is going to be open to the public. When the public utilizes this space, where will they be parking? At Gibson Park, or are these 103 parking spaces? Which spaces are designed for the people that want to use this facility?
Sure. And no, it's not the 103 parking spaces. Those 103 are specifically designated for the building, and they'll be monitored and marked. Mm-hmm. So there are actually 3 parking lots. One of them is the 15 public pier parking spaces that are going to get constructed with the project.
Okay.
Then there's a second new parking lot right over here that's being circled right now, which is actually going to be built where the ramps currently are. And Amy, do you have the exact number there? Is that 35 or 37 spaces?
Believe it was
so it is 25
spaces
right
as currently planned, but that is not finalized.
And then we're adding additional spaces over here too.
Yeah, and then there's an existing parking lot that's currently associated with Gibson Park, and that's the parking lot you can really only access through Riverside. And we're going to eliminate that access and actually create a new entry point off of this roundabout, and then also expand that parking facility. So numbers F and G on this map you'll see here.
Yes.
So the existing is 36, and then the new on F is another 34.
Okay.
So,
and thank you. And one additional question, maybe this is for Frank Stringy. This project, is this all by right and in accordance with our zoning? There are no variances needed for this project at all?
They haven't officially filed before the site plan review yet, Paul.
Right.
So when we do, we'll do a complete zoning analysis. And I think their plan is to have everything as of right to meet all the dimensional requirements of the overlay district and the use requirements. So at this time, I believe everything is as of right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the panelists at this time? Because we have a lot of questions stemming from the attendees, and a lot of them are very similar. So we're going to do our best to kind of bundle them into one package of questions if they relate to parking, if they relate to transportation, amenities, those types of things. So right now we have about 30 questions. We also have 7 attendees who have their hands raised. We're going to do our best to answer what we can tonight, like I said, by bundling the questions together. What is not answered will be answered later on. We also have John Powers wishing to ask another question.
I have 2 questions for Damien, and these are questions that have been consistently asked by my constituency. The first question is, Damien, is there a proposed walkway from that site under the GE Bridge to the Rice Avenue?
Yeah. No, there is not. There is no proposed walkway under the bridge. For a number of reasons. Number one is we don't own the Mirage site, so we don't control that land, and we're not making any connections there. So no.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Is there a proposed walkway from the GJ site under the GE Bridge area to Rice Avenue?
No, there is not. No connections.
That's my next concern was from a resident that would like to feel that there is some prospect down the road to convert these units or some of these units to condos. In other words, are they being wired and plumbed for the drainage and wiring that would be in the water supply that would be necessary to convert them to condos if that was the desire of the developer?
Yes, all the utilities are going to be separately metered, including water.
Yeah. Each house has done that. I know that for a fact. Thank you very much, Damien.
Thank you, Councillor.
Julie, might I suggest in the absence of additional questions from the panelists that we move on to the audience? I believe, as you indicated, there are 7 questions from there, and if I can pull them up on the screen, perhaps we could begin with Heidi Green. Heidi, if you could identify yourself and ask your question, please feel free to do so. Heidi, you'd have to unmute yourself to do that.
Hi, my name is Heidi Green. I live at 19 Wadsworth Ave. I'm quite shocked at the massing of this building. Can you tell us what the square footage is proposed to be?
Sure. I mean, David, would you mind providing the exact square footage of the gross residential and then also gross residential, including the parking?
The gross residential is 275,000 square feet. The total building area, including the parking, is 334,000 square feet.
And at one of the subcommittee meetings, they said that the overlay district that was approved would allow 150 units by right. And now tonight they're saying that all of these units, the 291 units, would be a matter of right. Can we get some clarification on that, please?
I never heard that, and that was never part of the overlay discussion. So I'm not sure where that information came from. I'm sorry.
It did. It came from one of the public meetings. So is it the city's position that 290 units would be a matter of right to be built on the site?
Keep in mind, this is Bob O'Brien, Heidi, the overlay district has dimensional requirements. It doesn't have any specific reference to the number of units that would be allowed within those dimensional requirements. So units are not a subject of the overlay district per se. I believe what's being proposed here, consistent with the dimensional requirements allowed by the overlay district, 291 units are being proposed. I do not recall in any of the meetings that I moderated that 150 was mentioned. It might have been mentioned perhaps as a desire by one or another commentator, but I don't believe it was ever mentioned by the city or by Redgate.
If you're changing it, though, from industrial to residential, isn't there a density that would be associated with that residential zoning?
Yes, there is, and that density is reflected in the dimensional requirements in the overlay district itself. But what I'm suggesting is that within that allowed density, which is considerably less dense, by the way, than is what has been proposed elsewhere on the waterfront and has been developed elsewhere on the waterfront, there is no specific reference to unit count in particular or unit mix. Those are issues that will be addressed in the context of the site plan review committee process, but are not addressed in zoning per se.
And then Heidi, I mean, just to give you a little bit more detail, the way density is controlled, you know, in most zoning ordinances is through something called FAR, which Bob alluded to, and that's called floor area ratio. So in essence, if you had a 10,000 square foot lot and the FAR was 1, you could build a 10,000 square foot building. And then that would be controlled by the height and setbacks. If you had an FAR of 3 on a 10,000 square foot lot, you could build a 30,000 square foot building controlled by height and all those other things. So in essence, what the overlay district did is it established an FAR, and as Bob mentioned, the FAR here is significantly lower than what's allowed on the beach. Those FARs exceed around, a 3. The FAR here that was approved, I believe, is a 1.75. And so we're actually developing a building that's actually below that allowed FAR. It's obviously a large site, but the density in terms of the mass against the land area is almost half of what's being done on the beach, just to give you a sense.
Okay, and my last question has to do with access. I was wondering why the Riverside neighborhood has been promised that the access to your development has been eliminated through their neighborhood. And I'm assuming that your tenants who are earning an average of $150,000 are going to be coming from Boston. And it seems like the Point of Pines is really going to suffer the brunt of the access to your development.
I don't think so, because I mean the access issue related to Riverside was that the Riverside community didn't want cut-through traffic going into Gibson Park, and obviously once all of these enhancements as part of the master plan happen to Gibson Park, hopefully it's going to be more desirable and a better resource for the community. So what we did is we came up, and this is in conjunction with the city and the state, was a transportation solution related to the reconfiguration of the existing ramps on the west side of 1A. That's actually going to improve traffic flow and improve connectivity. People coming from Boston to this site will not be going into Point of Pines, and that's a little bit off plan here. And I'm not sure if we actually have a rendering to show you, but basically if you're heading north, so right here, maybe they can show you. If you're heading north on 1A from Boston, you basically get off this ramp here and you take a left right into the site. So you're not even touching the Point of Pines neighborhood.
A lot of people, if you're taking the blue line, the Point of Pines, in order to access our neighborhood, we have to go off the Linway. We already suffer a lot of traffic impacts due to the blue line passengers, the beach traffic, commuters that don't want to take Route 1A, because a lot of times the city is backed up at peak traffic periods. So it is going to be an impact to our neighborhood.
Well, actually, I mean, if you just look at the plan, I mean, literally no one's going into your neighborhood. And I mean, Brian can maybe talk more about traffic counts and what the impact actually is. Brian, would you mind touching upon that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the figure here assumes the west side is on the top of 1A in this diagram, just to orient everyone. So this figure includes the ramps being redesigned, reconstructed as part of the 1A bridge project. And as Damien's saying, you would come off the ramp to the left of where it says fire station and make a left and go underneath 1A, right? So that underpass already exists, but of course it only leads to the loop ramps right now, which in the future would actually provide access to Gibson Park and to this site.
But I understand that, but the alternate is that if you're coming from the beach, you're going to be coming up the Linway, which is how we access our neighborhood. You're going to be taking a left at the fire station, and it's going to be having a traffic impact on us.
Heidi, if I might just add, Bob O'Brien, the one thing that needs to be noted is the only way to get to Gibson Park currently is through the Riverside community. And that imposes a burden on the Riverside community, which I think is unique to them and which we wanted to eliminate and mitigate. We don't think that is being done at the expense of the Point of Pines community, but I would note that as part of the permitting process, the developer will be required to do a traffic management plan that will show in detail what the impacts, if any, of the development will be on the adjacent neighborhoods. It will not be a matter of speculation. It will be addressed systematically through the local, state, and to some extent the federal permitting process, but primarily through the site plan review committee.
Yeah, so and if I'm hearing, sorry, go
ahead, Damien.
No, if I'm hearing Heidi's question correctly, I think what she's asking is, because of our development, we're going to have residents there, and some of those residents are going to go to the train station, and some of those residents are going to drive to the beach. And her question, I think, is that now when they all come home, that's going to create a greater traffic problem for the Point of Pines neighborhood. And maybe Brian could kind of talk about I mean, obviously what that could mean in terms of like peak travel times and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I understood it to be too. I am having computer issues and I am trying to pull up those numbers. So if you bear with me.
Because at peak times, it can be backed up along the whole Revere Beach. So I just see this adding an impact to that.
So I just wanted to make note, there's a lot of questions in the chat regarding the transportation management plan that's going to be implemented by Redgate at the development. So whether it's shuttles, there's also a question in the chat regarding the MBTA bus service to in and out of the site. So this isn't going to just be having more traffic coming down the boulevard. As you know, right now, there is a lot of traffic coming down the boulevard. People are turning off. And Brian can talk a little bit more about the functionality of a roundabout as well. And as soon as he brings up those numbers, we can talk about that. But I think, Damien, if you could just touch upon, again, the traffic management plan with the shuttles that you were proposing for the site. And those shuttles usually tend to carry 60 people at once during peak hours, both southbound and northbound.
Well, I mean, so yeah, before, I let Brian get back to it in terms of the details. So this project, as mentioned, is going to have to institute a series of transportation demand measures. And these are all things that are being done in order to, one, promote alternate means of transportation. And so those haven't been determined yet. And then these are all going to they're going to come out of the site plan review process based upon community input. And they're going to be things that are going to be demanded upon Redgate to do in order to further mitigate the traffic. So Brian's going to touch upon what it currently means without those mitigating factors. And then the things that we're going to introduce are going to even further lessen that. So one of the key things is that we plan on running a private shuttle. And that private shuttle its sole function is going to be a commuter shuttle. So it's going to hopefully take cars off the road for people going to and from Wonderland. One of the things it's not going to do, which I heard from a member of the community, is take people from this building to your private beach. This shuttle is controlled by us. That's not going to happen. We may end up running this shuttle as a convenience shuttle in the summer to take people to Revere Beach at the Wonderland train station. So we're going to do everything we can to help mitigate the traffic. But that said, maybe Brian can actually talk about what the impact could actually be, even without those mitigating factors.
Yeah, apologize for that. Sorry it took so long, but I have the numbers up now. So in the afternoon or in the evening, the peak hour, which is 1 hour, the peak hours is literally 60 minutes. That's how we do analysis for traffic studies. There's about 775 vehicles heading up the Linway. And, obviously most of that, almost all of it gets onto 1A at the on-ramp there. We would be adding about 50 vehicles to that total during that same peak hour. So it's, proportionally, it's even on the Linway, it's a very small impact. And then, of course, compared to 1A, it's much less than that.
I mean, it's clear, Heidi, that we have an existing problem with commuter traffic from Boston through Revere to the North Shore. This development is not going to make that go away. The question is, will it significantly exacerbate that problem? And I think the answer to that is no. But we need to work as a city on traffic management problems beyond this project to reduce the impact of commuter traffic on Revere, and we are doing that. Could I call on Natalie McKenna, who I think is another attendee who has a question? Natalie, would you unmute yourself and speak?
Hi, folks. Thank you. Point of Pines resident here. My question, I think, may have just been addressed in the chat, but my concerns were modifications to the frequency of the MBTA service on the 441, 442, and whether Point of Pines residents would have the option to take the shuttle, the private shuttle.
Sure. I mean, Julie, do you want to address the questions related to the MBTA?
So, Natalie, I just addressed your question regarding the MBTA, reworking of the MBTA route of the 441 and the 442. The MBTA is very much aware of the possible development on the site, and we are working with them to not only redevelop or relocate a stop on the Point of Pine side for the 441 and the 442, but also work in a stop on the riverside of the development. So that way the bus does not have to come in all the way to the Pines, turn around and then go back out again. So we are working with them. They are aware of the possible development at the site. Once if this is approved and it is a go, we will then begin the discussions of how the route will work, where the additional stops will be added, and then we would go from there.
Great. And then in terms of the private shuttle, you know, we obviously haven't gotten into that deep of a discussion yet, but I think that's a really reasonable request. You know, one of the things that we're going to do is my hope is that the community manager here, who in essence is like the manager of a large, you know, an experienced manager, somebody who would be in essence managing a large hotel because of the level of service here, is going to be able to have strong outreach to the community. I'm hoping that they have a direct relationship to whatever community liaison both Riverside and Point of Pines would like to designate, have a direct relationship with the president of the Point of Pines Beach Association. And I think we can coordinate all those things. And like I said, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I will probably reserve the right to exclude certain people, but otherwise, I think that's something we can try to work out.
Frederick Sanella? Frederick.
Sorry, Bob. You know, we have some other questions regarding to infrastructure related to the sewer system, and then we also have some other questions as well. So we have a question from one of the attendees regarding the capacity of our current sewer system to handle the number of units that would come online. And then the question regarding would there be additional pumping stations also be installed in the event that this project would be permitted and these new units would come online. So Frank, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, as everybody's aware, the Point of Pines sewer pumping station was reconstructed in 2012. That pump station the pumps were sized adequately to handle a full build-out scenario of the G&J site, the Thayer Ave Boatyard site, all the sites that have been undeveloped in the Point of Pines area. So there's no question that the pumps themselves are sized properly to handle the additional wastewater flow coming from any future development. However, the developer will still have to undertake a sewer system evaluation study of that station and most likely increase the size of the wet well to handle the additional flow from that development. We've already had discussions with the developer's contracted engineering team, and we have been meeting with them to discuss those options and how to improve the wastewater pump station's wet well capacity. So that has to happen for this development to go forward. Part of the site plan review process requires that there be no adverse impact to our infrastructure system, be it sewer, water, or drainage. So the developer has to mitigate those impacts. And to do that, he has to improve and upgrade the wet wells in that sewer pump station.
I would also note, Frank, that in addition to whatever is required to service this development in particular, this project will be contributing something on the order of $750,000 to the improvement of infill and infiltration in the sewer system for Revere as a whole.
Yeah, and that money will go right directly into the Point of Pines area for upgrading any sewer lines in that area that need to be upgraded. And unfortunately, I don't think we have anybody here from Water and Sewer that can answer to that. But
I believe Joe Maglione.
Yeah, you do, Frank.
Yeah, Joe is here.
And Donnie. Donnie, so you want to add some additional comments to?
Yeah.
Frank?
So as Frank suggested, the pumps can actually handle the flow, but right now those 290 units are basically the equivalent of what the the Point of Pines area contributes to that pump station. And right now that wet well is maxed out. It can barely handle the flow in there now. So no more connections can be made to that existing system unless the wet well is increased in size, in depth, and maybe even diameter. Also, the sewer main that comes across North Shore Road would have to be looked at, because that also might be increased in size during peak flow times, particularly during rain events. We have more than a half a pipe coming across North Shore Road, and those 290 units would definitely max out that main that's going across. So all of it would have to be looked at, and all of it would have to be addressed. And it would also have to be the plan would have to be satisfy the city of Revere, because those 290 units are literally the equivalent of what's down the Pines. So,
and Donnie, as a member of the site plan review committee, it will be your responsibility to assure that the developer addresses all of those things as they are impacted by this development project as part of the Revere permitting process. Is that not correct?
Yes, and also we would actually independently review their engineers' calculations to make sure that there's no room for error, because the source system and the water system is the most important systems to the residents.
Okay, with that, could I then call Julie on Fred Salnella, who I believe has had his hand up for some time?
So we have, we call on Hugo Rizzuto. He's one of our attendees. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good.
Thank you for your patience.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you for waiting patiently for us to call on you.
No problem. First of all, I'd like to thank Damien and Bob O'Brien for this presentation, because I'll tell you, up to this point, I and a lot of my neighbors and people at the Point of Pine section have not been happy with the effort that was put forth by the city to clearly inform the citizens of this area. Now, before anybody starts jumping down my throat, let me say that yes, the master plan was advertised properly in November and December. There was meetings. I must admit that I was sleeping at the wheel, and shame on me. I did not pick up on it. And I, as well as a lot of the people in the area, were a little bit confused by this particular master overlay zoning approval process and the Point of Pines Beach management plan that Al was working on. A lot of people thought that they were two in the same. So that's neither here nor there. It's water under the bridge. At least now we know what is going into this particular location. Let me start my comments now by saying that we, the citizens of Point of Pines and Riverside, do not want the GJ site, the boatyard, the other area, the Mirage area, to remain the way it is, okay? We do want that area to be developed. We want it to be developed properly, and we want full transparency. That full transparency hasn't been there to this point, although everybody in the city, all the political leaders feel that there was and so on. I'll tell you, you walk around Point of Pines and a lot of people will say, what development? Okay, so transparency is critical to get anything approved in that area. You have a lot of people in the Point of Pines that are extremely, extremely upset because they feel that this project, the overlay zoning district, was shoved down their throat. This particular project is also shoved down their throats. Let me address a few points here. First of all, let me talk again about the pro side of things. We do want to get something developed, and in order to get it developed, I understand that in order to get it developed properly, you got to spend money. You have to spend a lot of money, and I know that Damien has put a lot of effort and a lot of money, from what I've seen, into getting this project approved, and he's got a lot of money ahead of him to be spent to get to the end zone. One of the things that I don't see here is the ownership element. A lot of people feel, and when I say a lot of people, these are people that I talk to on a daily basis. Walking around the neighborhood, people call me. I see people on Facebook, although I'm never on there. But a lot of people would like to see an ownership element, because they feel that an ownership, such as condos, would bring a little bit more stability than the 1 to 3 year projection that Damon has of the people that are going to live there. And since the site is being built with individual utilities, I think it would be easily possible to convert a section, a wing or something, to some condos, so that there is some ownership element to the project, which not only would appease a lot of people in the neighborhood, but we would feel better that there are people that are going to be there for the long haul. They're going to stay there. People coming and go is not good. Damien, if you could you tell me what the breakdown is of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom in the complex?
Or you know what? I'm sorry. I don't have the matrix in front of me. David, do you happen to have that matrix?
We do. The studios are very low in this project. There are 21 of them. 1 beds, there are 170, 92 beds, and 10 3-bed units. Okay.
We know very well that, and I know your studies have shown that you're not going to have any students, any families with any kids that are going to utilize the school infrastructure of the city. But there will be 3 bedroom. Is that correct? Yeah.
10 3-bedroom units.
10 3-bedroom units and some 2-bedroom units, 92 2-bedroom units.
Yeah.
There will be some element who will have children attending our local schools. Okay. One of the items that needs to be discussed is the cost of a local student who may be a special needs student and to attend the IEP, that's the individual education plan, who needs to have specific education. That student, that cost is anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000 to the city, and that's an average within the state of Massachusetts, anywhere between $80,000 and $200,000. If you have 2 students from this complex that will need individual attention, you could very well be siphoning off $300,000 to $400,000 off the city coffers to take care of those students. And I'm not saying that we should not take care of them by any means. I'm just trying to bring here the reality of the possibility that there will be some possible students that may need some extra help. The 6 stories and 291 units, there's been a lot of talk, and I don't know how this talk originated, but there's a lot of talk out there that says that if you don't get, Damon, if you don't get 291 units, basically you're going to walk away from this project. And that sounds to me like you're trying to hold the city hostage, that you either maximize this facility or see you later, you'll go someplace else. I'd like to see some open discussion, some alternatives, some possibilities. I hate to see people that are fixed in, this is what we're putting, whether you like it or not. We'll do what we need to do. That's not the way to approach a project. I think you need to have a real serious and open discussion with the political leaders of the city who represent us, okay? And with the neighbors who are concerned, particularly the neighbors at the Riverside and the neighbors at Point of Pines. Let's talk a little bit about the noise impact. And I'm sure you're going to be doing some noise impact studies. The noise coming off that current bridge is approximately 72 decibels when a car goes over that bridge. At nighttime, when I'm laying down in bed, and I live on Rice Ave, I live approximately 300 yards down Withen Ave from maybe a little bit more than 300 yards from the bridge, maybe 400 yards. And I hear those cars going over the bridge in the middle of the night. It concerns me that noise at 70 to 73 decibels is going to bounce off the buildings and it's going to hit the houses along the Linway in the Point of Pines section. So some sort of a noise impact study needs to be implemented before any part of this project even goes forward. Traffic impact. Let me talk about traffic. You probably have not driven North Shore Road or the Boulevard in the morning going in and in the afternoon coming home. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, parking lot coming in this direction to Point of Pines. Okay, 8 o'clock in the morning, going the other way, going to work, parking lot in that direction. Okay, your 1,500 car movements per day, or probably 500 during the morning, 300, 500, are going to certainly add. I think it was Bob O'Brien who said, or somebody said that it would not add to the concern on traffic. Let me tell you, it will add significantly. And that traffic impact study needs to be done. It needs to be done by an independent traffic firm so that we really know what the impact of the traffic that you're going to put out on this area will be. Let me talk about parking. You have 302 parking spots for 291 units. Some of those parking spots are tandem. That means that maybe a 2 or 3 bedroom unit will utilize some of those those two tandem spots. In reality, you are below the 1.04 parking spots overall per unit overall. There just isn't enough parking there. You showed in those very eloquent slides, people sitting, having an ice cream, people doing some yoga, people laying on the bench, people watching the sunset, and people eating in a restaurant. And this is the restaurant that's under the building, I assume. And we haven't even spoken about the other site, the Mirage site. You just don't have sufficient parking spots. You have 25 spots, which are visitor spots. It's just not enough. One restaurant will take those 25 spots in 10 minutes. Okay. I won't be able to go there for ice cream unless I have to walk there. So I think you need to take a look at the parking situation and definitely increase it somewhat. I know you have a van bringing people to Wonderland, and you hope that some people will not bring any cars to the area. But realistically is that people that are making $150,000, they like to have a car. They like to have their Mercedes parked down in the garage and readily accessible, whether they use it or not.
Hugo, I'm going to ask, I know you have a lot of valid concerns and we're writing them all down, but we also have a lot of people who are still waiting and have been waiting as long as you to ask them questions.
Okay,
So,
if I could just finish, I have several points, but let me just finish on 2 quick points.
Okay, because we're coming up on a half an hour left to this meeting and we still have a lot of people very quick. They are valid. And so if we can also contact you and we can take the questions down.
Just quickly on the Romney Marsh and the riverbank, you are going to alter over almost 5 acres of area and 500 linear feet of beach. I don't know what the consideration has been taken in terms of the fish that migrate in and out every day, the migratory birds that nest in that area every single year, the height of the building, the glass of the windows. All of that is a serious impact to the environment there. And then finally, the tax revenue offset to the city in terms of what each unit will cost to the city to maintain it in terms of fire, safety, DPW, and so on. And I'll end it there.
Okay, thank you, Hugo. We have to move on. I will reach out to you personally if you have any other comments you want us to address. All the public comments are going to be organized and addressed prior to site plan review. I'm going to call on Fred Sinella now. Fred, please state your question. Hopefully we can answer it for you.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak, and I do agree a limitation on our rhetoric should be. First, let me thank Mr. Carmella for telling it like it is. The pumping station, although it is new and better than what we had, many occasions they have had to use external pumps to keep the operation going. So a closer look at that will greatly be appreciated. Also, I disagree with Hugo. I agree with Hugo regarding the traffic on the Linway. There isn't an afternoon coming home during, especially the summer months, to go from Kelly's to the Pines a good 25 minutes to 30 minutes. So that there definitely has to be addressed. On the other hand, I'm curious as to how much public land have you people will be incorporated, and if anything has to be moved, whether it's the tennis courts or the playing fields, will that come out of mitigation money?
So to address, we're not touching any public land. All the improvements that you're seeing here are being done on private property. What we're doing is making stronger connections to the public land in order to promote, obviously, use. So we're not touching anything.
Good, thank you. That's a peace of mind, because unfortunately, people get the concept that it's a land grab, and I think, as was expressed earlier, the better it's explained, the better off I think we'll accept what is being offered. I do thank you for allowing me the time to speak, and for the residents of the Pines. One other question: with the reconfiguration, the Pines people can walk over to Gibson Park with the new transit or the new traffic flow. Will that still be allowed, or will we have to drive around and come in up off the other way?
No, I mean, one of the main goals of this was to make a better connection for the Pines residents to utilize Gibson Park and that waterfront. So, yes, there are vehicular connections, but there are also going to be improved bicycle and pedestrian connections in conformance to something called complete streets. So the idea is we want people from the Pines to walk here and to use the waterfront and to go to Gibson Park. So we're going to enhance those connections.
Okay, thank you. One other point on the morning with the traffic. If I have a meeting at City Hall or the school department, and if I don't leave my house at 7:15 to 7:30, I will not make a 9 o'clock appointment up on Broadway. So that has to be looked at also. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Julie, perhaps Wissam Tabuli has been waiting and might ask his question now. Would you unmute yourself, Mr. Tabuli, or? Hearing nothing from Wissam Tabuli, perhaps we can move on to Elizabeth Dixon. Elizabeth, do you have a question? Can you unmute yourself, please? Elizabeth, are you there? Next in line seems to be Vincent Maleko. Mr. Maleko. Hearing nothing at the moment from Mr. Maleko. Are you there?
Yeah. Bob, could you explain where the mute button is on the screen at the bottom left-hand corner for everybody?
Yes, the mute button, as indicated, is at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and you just have to click on it to unmute yourself.
All right, hang on. We had an internet outage at City Hall, so who are you trying to let speak?
Mr. Maleko, Vincent
All right,
Maleko.
give me a second. We're just getting caught back up here. Hang on.
Okay. I had previously called on Elizabeth Dixon, Wissam Tabuli.
Okay, yeah, we went out here at City Hall, so I just managed to get back up and running myself, but the internet is still out here, so we've lost the panel upstairs.
Okay, well, if you can unmute Elizabeth Dixon, Wissam Tabuli.
Vincent Malika.
Vincent, can you hear us?
Vincent, you should be able to talk now. I'm going to allow Elizabeth Dixon to talk.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Dixon.
We can hear you.
Elizabeth, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. My question was regarding the water table. With the change from the overlay district, has that been looked into yet? Because any kind of changes recently, as in with the beach house, there's issues now with an uptick in the flooding on North Shore Road. And has that been taken into consideration with the size of the building that's going to be going up on the GJ property?
Hi, Elizabeth. Damien. I'm actually not sure about what your question is. Is it related to like potential future flooding, or do you think that building a building here is somehow going to impact the groundwater below the building?
Well, it's both, because we've experienced, I live along the Linway, that with building when the units at 190 North Shore Road went in, and the condo units behind us, they did affect the water table where we're living. And I've also experienced with high tides and the changes based off of along the boulevard, that there is now flooding with the high tides and bad weather along North Shore Road. And I just don't know how this will continue to affect it, because this all flows into that overlay district area.
Sure. I mean, I think I can hopefully easier respond to the question related to flooding and resiliency, but your question on the water table, I'm still trying to get my arms around that one. It's what has happened with the water table because of the developments next door to you, just so I understand that.
The water table's become shorter. Well, it's come up higher.
The water's come up higher. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's because of those developments. Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Well, it's happened since those developments. I've been a resident here my entire life, which is 58 years.
Yeah.
So, I've experienced the change through my lifetime.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, let me just at least talk about the flooding. And then I believe Katie Cruz, our civil engineer, is on as well, too. And maybe she has a better response than me in terms of like what water table impacts. But, in terms of the flooding, and this was something that we try to touch upon a little bit earlier. So right now, if you go out to the G&J site, it's almost totally paved. And so what ends up happening is rain happens, storm events happen, the water just kind of sheets off and then goes to whatever direction, the grades are. Our intention here is to design the site so that it retains as much water as possible. And that's an important thing, because that means that water is not going somewhere else. So in addition to greatly increasing the landscape area and using materials such as permeable pavers, we're also installing these specific design features called rain gardens that help hold water. So that all helps with resiliency and flooding. And by us pitching the site in a certain direction, we're actually preventing the water from going towards those neighborhoods. That said, Point of Pines is naturally protected because Route 1A is at a higher elevation. The flood path into Point of Pines doesn't come through this site. And then in terms of the Riverside neighborhood, we're pitching away from that neighborhood, and we're actually pitching away from Gibson Park. So we're actually trying to protect Gibson Park, trying to protect the Riverside neighborhood. So I think what we're trying to do is actually create a higher level of resiliency for our neighbors around us. And then Katie, are you on by any chance?
I'm here.
Do you understand that the water table issue and the water table has been rising and the impacts? Do you think you can? Are there like hydrological impacts on other buildings that could be happening?
Yeah, I would say that the water table issues are probably more related to increases in high tide elevations and general sea level rise, like you mentioned, over 50 years than they are to nearby development. I just don't think that, certainly not this project, and I am not as familiar with the other projects. It just wouldn't have that impact on the surrounding properties.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Katie, could there be an impact if like people are building homes or buildings that have like basements and suddenly that water has to go somewhere else and maybe it's putting additional pressure on abutting properties? Could that be an issue? I don't know.
I suppose there could be some displacement because of that. And this building does not have a basement. It's the garage level is at ground level, so that would not be a result of this project. And our goal with this design is to infiltrate water through the rain gardens, through porous pavement, through landscaped areas, where the existing site now is almost completely paved and there's no opportunities for that. But there's also a pipe system that will convey water from the site to the rivers. There will be less water going to the rivers in the proposed condition because there will be more infiltration of water on site. But this site will not have an impact to the groundwater tables at nearby properties.
Okay, thank you.
Nick Malaysian, he had his hand raised. Nick, who is the chair of our Revere Conservation Commission. Nick, do you want to add your input onto the question about the water table? And
yeah, I just wanted to state something that right now, that whole area as far as Riverside, Gibson Park, GJ, has no flood management or control whatsoever. With this new project, what's going to happen at Gibson Park and the boatyard eventually, and what's going to happen here at the GJ site is going to bring some sort of flood management, stormwater management that's going to control water that's going to come. Right now, there is zero. There's no capacity for stormwater management. Where this project, as well as Gibson Park and the boatyard, what is proposed to go there is going to control a lot of it. There's going to be management now. So I don't think the flooding is going to increase at all. I think it's actually going to decrease because we're going to have some sort of management for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is
Vincent Maleko.
Bob, I think I'll want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, El.
No problem. So I just wanted to mention on Nick's comment and the previous comments. So we have been doing simultaneous studies, which I think someone alluded to. There was some confusion before, but the MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Planning, is happening simultaneously to this previous project, and it continues to go on. And we will be addressing and putting in plans for flood mitigation for the Gibson Park site, the boatyard, as well as Mills Ave. So we're actually just diving into that now in the process of that project. So those things will be addressed. And I also wanted to just agree with Katie that sea level rise is really impacting that area. And we have a lot of data and modeling that will come out of this other project that can be paired with this as well. So I don't want to take away from that, but just to let you know that those elements are also being taken in our municipal vulnerability preparedness planning.
I would also note that there are elements of the Riverfront master plan, particularly as they relate to the design and function of Gibson Park itself and the potential for stormwater storage beneath Gibson Park, that will be addressing some of these issues in the context of the MVP program that
we will, and we're actually lining that up for the next MVP application round as well.
Excellent. Mr. Maleko, I believe you are allowed to speak at the moment. If you could unmute yourself, and please feel free to ask your questions or make your comments. Mr. Maleko, are you available?
He unraised his hand.
Yes, okay. You can hear me now, correct?
We can, Vincent, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. My name is Vincent Lake. I live at 15 Wadsworth Ave. I'm retired from the school system. I dealt with issues such as enrollment, residency, and so forth, and dealt with large buildings and the issues with students and so forth and residents. Okay, first of all, I think your $150,000 is unrealistic as an average income. And an income like that, you could buy a condo. Why would you have an apartment when you have a condo on the beach? Second of all, our past experience, your presentation is impressive. However, we've had similar presentations, such as the Rose Quarry project up in North Revere. It said similar things, and the end result was what they said and what occurred was different. They said there weren't going to be children in the buildings and all, and that was not the case. And they were very uncooperative, and we found that many more people were living in the buildings that were supposed to. And I predict the same thing will occur here. The other thing we tried to clamp down on it, we got a lack of cooperation from the administration of the building. The turnaround, the traffic is going to be brutal, especially in the summer. The schools are overcrowded as is. They don't have enough room to build more schools. Years ago, Revere had the best urban school system in the state. That is no longer the case. The schools are overcrowded. More apartments are being built. The class sizes are increasing exponentially. And in the end result, most projects like this cost more to educate the children than it does receive in taxes. And that's an issue that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to get worse. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Sure. So Vincent, you made a comment that this presentation was nice, but that, you've seen similar presentations and they haven't been up to snuff or they haven't promised what they said. This is our fourth project in the city of Revere. You can just look at our existing projects to figure out what we've done. I think we have a pretty long and successful track record. We said no kids. Out of One Beachmont, 500 Ocean, and Ryder, there are no school-age children out of those projects. That's a fact. Questioning the average household income, it's a fact what our average household incomes are. I have the data. We actually qualify people on their income. The reason why we have residents making $400,000 a year in some of the units. The reason why people choose not to buy is not necessarily related to their income level. Sometimes it's a lifestyle decision. There was a comment made earlier about the 3 bedrooms and that the 3 bedrooms are going to drive students here. Those 3-bedroom rents, and I actually talked to the city and I talked to Councillor Powers about this. We have 5 3-bedrooms at 500 Ocean. The renters of those 3 bedrooms, all of those 3 bedrooms go for about $4,500 a piece, from 42 to 47. They're all rented. 4 of the 5 are rented to empty nester couples. These are families that are moving from outside of Revere, whether it's from Nahant. We anticipate people selling homes in Marblehead and Swampscott. What Revere has done over the past 10, 20 years is change a stigma. And now suddenly you're seeing people moving in from these communities into Revere. They don't want home ownership. They want the convenience of living in a full concierge building. They want the amenities associated with that building, and they're willing to pay for it. So we don't drive children here. And it's a fact. It's been studied by the city. Yes, there are projects that do attract children, and that's typically driven by price point. When you offer 3 bedrooms at $1,500, you are going to get kids. That's a fact. That's not what this is offering. It's a completely different product. It's substantiated not only by our other 3 projects in Revere, it's substantiated by the Beach House, Ocean 650, all of the other, great assets that were developed there. So unfortunately, I disagree with your comments, and I'm happy to share data and facts with you. It's not general studies. It's actual performance and actually what's happened in the community.
Vincent, I might just add that I think This is Bob O'Brien, Vincent. I think your points are well taken, and I think a lot of people share your concerns. I think, as Damien has indicated, the facts can demonstrate that the contrary is true. But what I would also note is the city understands, especially given the conditions that you described, that among the things that we need are a new high school in this community. And you probably more than most on this call understand the kind of financial commitment that that makes. Assuming that there is the kind of limited impact on enrollment that I think Damien has demonstrated to be the case for his projects and elsewhere along the waterfront, this project and 500 Ocean as another example, each contribute $1 million a year in property taxes every year. And those are the property taxes that we are going to need to build the new high schools and to allow for the conversion of existing high schools to middle schools, et cetera. We can't do that without resources, and those resources are being provided in very large part by the new development that has been happening. And the facts simply are that they are not sending the kids to school that people feared they might. It's a different situation living on the waterfront than it is in a more pastoral setting at Overlook Ridge, where it's a more children-friendly environment. But I think the benefits are going to be far greater here.
One final, it is true. What you're saying can be true. That's if the quality of the building remains the same, and as such, it doesn't deteriorate and the clientele remains that way. But if it does deteriorate, that's a whole different ballgame.
That is correct, and that is why Redgate proposing this development has more credibility along those lines than virtually any other developer that might consider doing so, because we have the record of their performance in Revere and in surrounding communities over the past several years, which speaks for itself, I think.
Thank you. Okay.
Ron Clark. Ron, are you available?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ron, go ahead.
Hi. I actually have several questions. First, I'll compliment you on the aesthetics for everything. That looked very nice. It just seemed like you just shied away from the building itself and showing us all the nice amenities, which looked nice. But anyway, I live on Whitten Ave. I'm not really in favor of this. But my number one question, I have several questions, but my number one question is noise. I live on Whitten Ave, and also I'm a member of the yacht club, and I tend to live on my boat part of the summer. How much noise am I going to have to deal with? I noticed on your thing you said you're going to be using Revere basic ordinances, which includes working up till 7 o'clock and includes Saturdays. What are your plans for that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we should talk about like the seasonality of construction and what happens, and obviously your quiet enjoyment in your home and also on your boat. You know, if everything goes as planned, and which there's a good chance, you know, that things don't go as planned, but if everything goes as planned, the heavy construction work associated with the foundation system would occur over the winter. And that's probably a 3-month process. And then obviously, as the building is going up, the extent of noise is really related to nail guns. And being 600 to 800 feet away, I'm not sure what that impact is actually going to be. That said, you know, one of the commitments that I made at the very beginning of this presentation is that we are going to work with individual neighbors to deal with their specific concerns. This is a large project. It's a $100 million project, tens of millions of dollars of public infrastructure coming along with it. And I spoke to one resident at the very top of Whitten Ave who works from home. She's concerned that during that time period, she may have issues. She may need something in order to help mitigate that. And I'm willing to talk to her about that because we want to be good neighbors and we want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to create issues. In terms of, you know, times of construction, you know, that's something that's going to get regulated by the site plan review and our construction management plan. I don't see us working till 7 o'clock at night on this site. That's not a typical schedule. Oftentimes when you run behind on something, it's typically towards the end of the job and you got to finish your interiors. That's when you run crews later and longer, but that's all interior work. So you're typically not going to run into any noise issues there. But like I said, we're happy to work personally with you to try to figure something out that works.
Okay, that's part of my problem is both me and my wife work from home or work from the boat. Okay. I got another question. You said you're going to power the building mostly by electricity. Recently, we had an accident up on North Shore Road that hit one pole and took out the whole Point of Pines and I think part of Riverside. How are we going to guarantee we have enough electricity without brownouts during the summer and that kind of problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an electrical engineer, and Katie Cruz, who's not one either, but handles kind of some of the civil related stuff. I mean, that's obviously something we're going to evaluate with the utilities, and we're going to make sure it's not an issue. And if so, we're going to have to be required to upsize things.
Okay, I know it's getting late, so I'll just hit you with one more question. Sure. I saw you're going to use like a rodent plan. I'm imagining that's after the building's up. What about when you first start construction? I imagine there's things growing over there that maybe man hasn't even seen yet.
Yeah, no, that rodent control plan is actually instituted during construction, actually before construction. We would start baiting actually before we even put a shovel in the ground. What typically creates a rodent issue is, excavating. And so although we're not building a basement here, there is going to be some vibration that doesn't extend out more than 100 feet, but it could potentially, disturb some animals or whatever it is. And so we would start baiting early. And then in terms of the excavation, our excavation is really going to be for elevator pits and kind of for footings. And we're not even doing footings. We're doing pile caps here because of our deep foundation. But yeah, it's going to be in accordance to a rodent control plan that will be instituted very, very early on.
Okay. Thank you. I'll leave it enough time for somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Can I call on Kim Williams or Wissam Tabubi? I called on Wissam before, and you may have not been able to get on because of our technical problems. Are you available?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Let's start with Kim then.
Okay. My comments are more to the city officials about is this the only possible project that we could have for this area? Because I feel like I understand we need money for schools and the tax money, but I feel like there's so many developments going up in the city right now that should be covered. Was there anything else considered for this area? I understand it needs to be cleaned up and developed, but what other proposals were there? Is this the only one?
Let me just say, this is private property, Kim, and we are not as a city in a position to dictate the kind of projects except within the zoning envelope that can happen. I will say this is the only viable and constructive and positive project that has thus far been presented, and that has even been considered in my 5 years as Director of Economic Development. From my point of view, in the context of the master plan, the prospect of Redgate developing the kind of project that they're outlining here was really exceptionally good news given what the current situation is. We cannot require a condominium project to be built that was earlier suggested. We have to deal with the projects that are presented to us. This project appears to be a very positive contribution to the transformation of the Riverfront district as a whole. And there is no one behind Redgate in line with another alternative proposal, certainly nothing that would be preferable to what we're seeing now.
And then Bob, if you wouldn't mind, I can just maybe expand just a little bit on that. And Kim, this is Damien. So when we look at a piece of property, we look at the highest and best use for that property in terms of being able to actually create a project that's feasible, constructible, financeable. And then at the same time, you have another party, which is the land seller. That land seller has to be motivated in order to sell their property. And in the case of G&J, they have to be motivated not to just to sell their property, but to also relocate a very profitable operating business as well too. So all these factors come into it, but ultimately, in terms of what it comes down to is like what use can go here that will actually be viable. you can't develop an office building here. You know, this is not a hotel site, you know, particularly in the current environment. I don't think the neighborhood will be happy with the shopping center here that's going to generate, you know, way more traffic than this building would. And ultimately, this really is, besides its current condition, which is obviously challenging, this is a really good residential site as it relates to the type of product that we're proposing.
Yeah, I just, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just feel like every little spot in Revere is being taken up with an apartment complex. Why can't we just have a beautiful park? That's all. I guess I want to be publicly acknowledge that I oppose the apartment part of this development.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with it. I think there's way too many in the city. I think down the road, we're going to be sorry if the market changes or whatever. We're going to be stuck with a glut of apartments in the city. And there's no residential developments going up where people could actually buy property. There's no homes being built. There's no condominiums being built. And I think that's really sad.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay.
Wissam Tabubi, are you available?
Yes, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I got a few points here. So this was presented as for young professionals, and then we heard it's going to be about 92 bedroom units, and then 10 3-bedroom units. And also we talked about how all these, they're not going to have kids, or if they're going to have kids, they're not going to be here because whatever reason. We are talking about it just for, and we use an example of what Redgate built in the city of Revere, but this is a small sample in the last 2 years, and this doesn't talk about what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years from now. Also, these young professionals, also, they might not want to live here in the next 5 years after the building, changes. All the amenities, they're not the same. So that's point number one. Point number two is I think we overbrushed this is the traffic, and the way how it's set up right now, it's gonna cause a huge problems for the Punapines. And I think everybody who talked here not from the residents, I don't think they travel down Linway and Revere Beach and 1A every single day like we do. It takes me from Lancaster Ave to the end of Revere Beach about 25 minutes in the morning. In the afternoon, especially with the summer, forget about it. It takes me from the fire station to Lancaster again about 10 minutes, which is only should take 3 seconds. We didn't talk about the traffic. We're gonna put a fire station as well right there by the ramp. We move in the ramps. We have a rotary. That's gonna also impact the traffic coming from Lynn. That's gonna use that rotary to go towards the beach. Also from us trying to get to 1A. Also us coming from Lynn and trying to get to the Punapines. There's so many stops. There is so many, yelling to get to that rotary. There's so many stops to get to these ramps. And if one car stops, it has a ripple effect. And that's gonna affect both sides of 1A and also the adjacent road to 1A, which is the Linway. So that's, I don't think anyone has been talking about that or, pointing to that issue. It's more like, oh yeah, they're going to come in from 1A and take a left, enter the bridge and go to that apartments, which is also, it's just focusing on these new people, not on the neighborhood as a whole. I feel like this project, everything it's good and the project is bringing to the table. We spread it across the whole neighborhood, but where there's an issue and there's a problem, we put it in a silo. Like, oh, okay, we're gonna have only 5.44 vehicles coming in and going. That's times 300 or 290 units. Do the math and see how many traffic we're gonna have a day. We didn't consider the people coming from Lynn again, people going to Lynn and Marblehead and Salem. If you guys think that's going to be just using Route 1A to get to Salem or to get to Lynn, I'll offer you a chair and you can sit by the fire station and see the traffic in the morning and who cuts through and come through this neighborhood. I think, again, it needs to be a study about this, an independent study. I would like some of the residents be, you know, overlooking these and be part of the these studies, not just the city. And that's that. And I was on the other side of Damien as well, so I know this project is going to go forward and get built. So there's nothing that the resident going to say is going to stop this.
Thank you, Wissam. I can assure you that that math will be done and all of those issues will be taken into account in traffic studies that will be made public as they are proceeding. But thank you for your comments. Patricia DeAngelis, are you still available? Patricia, you can now speak if you can unmute yourself if you're still with us. Okay, not hearing from Patricia. Michael Maynard, I know, Michael, you have several questions, and I would just encourage you to focus on the priority questions that you need to address. I see in the Q&A there are a lot of issues that you have raised that will be addressed, but could you focus on the most important of them from your perspective? Michael?
Sure, I'll try to keep it down. I have 23 questions posted, so I'll keep it down pretty short. A lot of these studies that you guys were talking about on how much parking you're actually using right now, these were done prior to parking meters, correct?
Those are all done prior to parking meters. We didn't have parking meters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that just one facet, you don't truly know how many people are actually there that leave their car on the street overnight.
Well, none of the developments on the waterfront, including this one, have the right to park on the street on DCR or Riviera roadways anywhere in the city. So I don't believe that's occurring, and to the extent that it is, it's being enforced.
And if you want to talk about the buildings that are being built in Lynn, there's roughly 3,000 units going in Lynn over the next few years. That added traffic as well. Is that being factored into your figures?
Yes, it is. And in fact, we have been working closely with Lynn and with the MBTA and DOT to deal with the larger issues of commuter traffic through Revere, whether by public transportation or by private transportation. So yes, it is factored in, and it needs also to be addressed separate from this project. We're not suggesting that commuter traffic does not impose a burden on Revere residents. It certainly does.
All right, and number 2 on this map that you're showing right now, that boardwalk, that was explained to be a public access space, is that correct?
Yes.
So who's liable if somebody gets hurt on that space?
Damien, do you want to speak on that?
Sure, it's private property. It's like it's going to have a public access easement across it, most likely a formal public access easement, and we're going to hold the liability insurance.
Okay. Yeah, because there was a stabbing recently down here, and I just wanted to be sure, you know, if something like that did occur, you know, because this is adding a nice little in and out from Lynn now that's not currently there, by putting a rotary right there that's allowing people to come on and off the highway quickly, get in and out and do what they need to do and then leave. We have had a series of car break-ins on our side of the bridge. And as Damien pointed out earlier, I think he misunderstood my question. It's not necessarily us breaking into your cars or you breaking into our cars. It's the fact that there is already an issue with car break-ins down here, and you're adding a nice little hotspot that's going to attract more car break-ins.
Oh, no, actually, you said it was the renters who are going to be breaking into cars. So that's, I have the email, but yeah, we can go on.
Yeah. So I think that you were putting assumptions into a lot of this, but you know, what's the mitigation plan for if somebody comes off Linway, comes down 1A, goes in, breaks into a bunch of cars, gets on the highway and takes off?
It's a total hypothetical. I don't know how to answer that, Michael.
All right.
Michael, a lot of the questions you put in the Q&A, we actually copied and pasted them. So we have them. So a lot of the questions that you have, we have already. So we can answer them more formal. There are a couple, like 2 questions you want to answer right now? Because we do have a couple more people waiting. and it is past 8 o'clock. I know this is an important topic for all the residents in the Pines and the Riverside, so I want to make sure that we're able to answer as many questions as we can, but we do have copies of your questions.
Okay, I'm glad you have copies because I'd like those to also be public.
We copy and paste them as they came up in the Q&A. So
Yeah, they will be, Michael, for
they
sure.
will be answered. So do you have 2 questions that are really haven't been asked yet from anybody that relate specifically to this project?
Sure. So I saw the shadow study that you guys did. Now, the question and concern from the citizens of this area is not the shadow from the building. It's actually blocking the sunlight when the sun goes down. And that's one part of this. And the other part of this is a private beach on the other side. How are you going to enforce that with your residents? And are the police already on board with enforcing this with your residents?
The question related to the sunsets, is that a specific concern of yours?
Yes.
And so you live in a 2.5-story home right next to a 3.5-story home that's 10 feet away, and you think that this building, which is almost 3 football fields away from you, is going to impact your sunset. I don't think that's the case. The sight lines are long. It's not going to be impacting your sunset or stealing sunset, as I believe you had quoted before. Related to, what was your second question?
The private beach. How are you planning on enforcing private beach? Because is there some sort of plan with the city, or is it, you guys are going to put it into the lease agreement, but
So I think at the beginning, I had a section related to the private beach. Number one, as you can tell here, we're building a multi-million-dollar waterfront of our own. Number two, we're going to have extensive private amenities within the building, such as a pool, outdoor gaming areas, lounging areas. We're going to do an outdoor cabana concept. You are not going to have people flooding over to your beach. The pedestrian path is well over 1,000 feet. So no one's going to be lugging their stuff to go to your beach and utilize it. Could there be a stray person who goes for an early morning walk? Yeah, totally. And that's something we're going to need to try to figure out and enforce. And one of the other things that I spoke about was creating a direct relationship between our community manager and whoever the appropriate liaison is there. So you guys have a direct line of communication in the event something like that does occur.
I might also add, Michael, that they are equally close to the first public beach in the United States, which is very attractive in and of itself. And if people do want to go to the beach, their only option is by no means the Point of Pines private beach. There is a public beach within a stone's throw of that. And I expect that's what will happen, particularly with the shuttle bringing.
Sorry, I missed the last point. It muted out.
I'm sorry, I said the shuttle bringing people down to the beach area is not going to focus on the Point of Pines private beach, but on the public beach itself. Might I suggest we move on to Angela Sawawa?
Thank you, Michael.
I'm sorry, Angela. Angela?
Hi, this is Angela Sawaya, the interim president of the Point of Pines Beach Association. My question, I have 2 questions. The first one is, Damien, where is the entrance of the actual building going to be? Is it facing the street?
So do you see where the number 1 is on the plan in front of you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's right there, actually. That's the main entry to the building. So the cars would come in off the roundabout. They would travel along the side of the building. If it was a drop-off or a pickup, it would happen right where the number 1 is. Otherwise, they would go into the garage or into the surface parking lot.
Is there going to be a deceleration lane?
A deceleration lane.
The acceleration lane, like a lane that like you can cut off.
Where? In front of our building?
On the highway to come off.
Well, there's going to be a ramp, and maybe Brian can talk about how the proper functioning of ramps and the difference between a roundabout and a rotary and all those little things.
Almost like a breakdown lane is what I'm talking about, or are they going to have to stop the traffic on the highway in order to get in?
Brian, do you have any planning you could talk about?
So if you could see the screen here, so it's similar to the existing off-ramp that exists, location-wise, where it meets 1A. But instead of looping around all of the green space that's shown here, it's going to stay closer to along Route 1A and then go around the roundabout And then if you're talking about pick up and drop off to this building, it's going to be internal to our site and not along 1A or even the off ramp itself.
Okay. My other question is, you were talking about the garage and you said it was going to be ground level. Am I right?
Yes, it's not a below grade garage, correct?
Okay, and is that going to have 6 stories above that, or is that?
No. That's the first story. It has. So not only is it the garage, Angela, it also has other. So we try to do our best to try to hide the garage as best as possible. So, is there a ground floor plan here somewhere that someone can go to? So this is the ground floor plan. So this is level 1, and then there's 5 levels above this. And so we have our lobby amenities, and then the retail at the corner, and then the garage sits here, and it's going to be shrouded by either architecture or landscaping.
Okay, I got on late. That's why I'm.
Oh yeah, no problem. We're happy to answer any questions you have, and we're happy to share this presentation with everybody.
All right, now I don't know if you're going to like this question, but
okay, I'll take it.
Is the site contaminated soil?
So we have done environmental testing on the site. Mm-hmm. We have not found anything that is considered reportable in terms of exceeding thresholds by the state. The soil is by no means clean, so it is going to have to get remediated. That said, what it's contaminated with are things that have typically leaked out of cars, fluids, oils, things like that. But they're not at a level where it's critical. They just need to get remediated. And so one of the questions we had early on was, how are you going to deal with this contamination? So we're actually going back out there in about a month to do additional drilling. So we're going to do some additional studies. And then before we start construction, we do something called soil pre-characterization, where we actually take the entire site and we grid it out. And then we test these small little grids to see how hot the soil is. And depending on the nature of the soil, it goes into either a lined landfill, an unlined landfill, or if it's suitable, it stays on site. And in the instance we were to find a hot spot that exceeded state regulations, we would have to shut down all construction and have our environmental engineer basically put together a plan on how to remediate the site. But to date, we haven't found anything that reaches that level.
The one thing I'm concerned about is if you have to actually grab the semi-contaminated soil or whatever we discover it's going to be, okay? Yep. And you have to truck it out of there.
Yep.
What route are you going to use? Are you going down 1A?
Yeah.
Are you going down North Shore Road? Now, what happens is when the trucks are carrying this stuff, the stuff is going to leak. So you're going to be leaking dripping contaminated soil or semi-contaminated soil all the way down 1A.
We definitely will not. We definitely will not be doing that. So, I mean, obviously, it's we're going to have a licensed site professional, which is the person that has an independent license in the state of Massachusetts to basically perform this type of remediation. So they're going to be on site monitoring this. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a game plan in plan, and like I said, there's nothing currently there that we found that exceeds those levels to get trucked off in terms of like the highly hazardous stuff. I mean, the other stuff is related to leaked oil and things like that. That said, that same licensed site professional is going to be administering the removal of that. So it's not going to be an open bed truck flying off on the highway. It's going to be capped, secured. We just did this in East Boston. So you're not going to have any issues at all.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Angela.
Angela, we have about 5 more questions, which I'd like to be able to get to if we could. Deborah Matrone, are you available? Deborah, are you available? You have to unmute yourself. Julie, do you need to enable Deborah to speak?
Deborah, you should be able to talk now.
Okay, go ahead, Debbie. Just unmute yourself. Deborah, are you available?
Yes, I am.
There you go. Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, so I have a lot of concerns.
Some feedback. Deborah.
Okay, one of my concerns is, as I mentioned in the series of questions I asked, currently, when I go food shopping, just very simple task. It should be, outside of having to live in the, 16th century. I like to be able to go food shopping and get back home within an hour, considering the store where I food shop is only a few miles from my home. So I'm really concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about the flooding. I'm concerned about the flooding mitigation. I'm concerned about increase in taxes due to, some people that are going to potentially live in the complex there on the west side of the Point of Pines. I have a lot of concerns. I'm really concerned about the quality of life going forward.
Understood.
We were able to copy your questions in the chat that you posed throughout this webinar.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You were going in and out. I think Julie was indicating that the questions that you have included in the Q&A session have all been noted.
There were several questions that you had put in the chat in regards to traffic numbers, the shuttle, the proposed shuttle to Wonderland. We have all of those questions, and some of them were answered in the presentation because some of them were asked by other participants. We can answer them in more depth for you after this webinar. I know you're concerned about the quality of life for yourself and your neighbors in the Point of Pines. I'm not sure, some of those things were mentioned in your question was more about traffic and just the shuttle and those items there. I think you also raised a question about Hello? Deborah, can you hear us?
Deborah, I think all of your points have been noted, will be referred to the Site Plan Review Committee, and that group will be addressing them for sure. Having a little problem with Deborah's connection. Could we move on to Patricia DeAngelis? Julie, if you could enable Patricia.
Okay, Patricia.
Okay,
Hi,
Patricia.
this is Patricia DeAngelis. Yes, can you?
Yes, we can hear you, Patricia. Go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
We can, yes. Go right ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you, Patricia.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I just had a question. If this building is built, how long does Redgate plan to own the property before they sell it out to private equity?
Sure. It depends on the project. We typically hold projects from anywhere to 5 to 7 years, but then there are other projects like One Beachmont that we've already made the determination we're going to hold it for at least 10 years. So somewhere between, I would say, 5 to 10 for the foreseeable future. We are not like merchant developers in the sense that we would either permit a site and then try to sell the permits or the vision or the plans. We always execute our buildings, and then we never sell buildings right upon completion. So the money needs to get recycled at some point in time. And so I would say, taking a guess, 5 to 10 years, but I'm not sure on which one we would end up here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Laura Connolly. Laura, are you available?
Laura, please unmute.
5 to 7, but probably this.
Hi, can you hear me?
7 to 10.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking my question. My question is referring to people from the residents there parking along the other streets. What's to deter them? I understand that they don't have permits to park on them, but who's going to monitor it if they do?
Well, perhaps I should address that on behalf of the city as we are implementing the on-street parking program for all of the various neighborhoods in Revere. I believe it's already implemented in the Riverside community, and I believe John Powers has a proposal before the city.
Thank you, Bob. The answer to that question is currently there is going to be a meeting of the Traffic Commission late in April. I don't have the exact date yet. And at that meeting, what I'm looking for, and many of the residents down on Riverside, on the Pine side, Rice Avenue side, want that. They want resident parking, 724. And that's one of the things we're going to be looking to implement. At the other side, Riverside, we are also going down there. In fact, I'm setting up an appointment with the fire chief to determine whether or not we can have any parking on the streets down there without impeding the flow of public safety vehicles, such as an engine or in some cases a ladder truck. So these decisions are all going to be made prior to the 1st of May. At that time they'll be in the newspaper, they'll be on our website, and people will be able to get a full understanding of what is going on with the parking in the Point of Pines area.
I would also note that the Parking Commission now deploys people for parking enforcement overnight. So they go into all of these areas in the middle of the night and cover a great portion of the city, and will be putting on additional resources if needed to cover the entire city as the parking program expands. So there will in fact be enforcement, and in fact in those areas where it's already implemented, that kind of enforcement has been very effective.
Okay, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you. Michael Carey. Michael, are you available?
Hello. Michael, please unmute yourself.
This is Courtney Carey. This is his daughter. Sorry, I wonder his name.
That's fine.
How are you? So I've been living here for 28 years. I grew up here. Yeah. And I just feel like honestly, this is a very beautiful project. I work in marketing communications in advancement. So I understand that this is going to be a very profitable building for our area. However, growing up in Revere, I just noticed Revere treasures its history, and Point of Pines, especially, its history has always been a small knit community, and Riverside. And I just feel like putting this here blends us in with the rest of Revere Beach, the Linway, and et cetera, et cetera. And we just become one with the rest of the beach, and we don't really stand out anymore. And I think it kind of kills our ambiance and what we have always been, and I thought would always be. And I just feel like, is there really nothing else that can go here? And this is a beautiful project, don't get me wrong, but it's just, it just kills what the Point of Pines and Riverside have always been. And I'm 28. I'm not saying that new things shouldn't come. They definitely should, but also traditional things in history are also very important to keep.
I would just say to that, obviously your point is well taken, but as Damien has indicated, this project is actually quite a distance from either the Riverside or the Point of Pines residential communities, which
and what about the Linway communities?
Including the Linway, it is significantly set apart. And keep in mind that the alternative, the history of that site has been G&J for many decades. And I don't think that is part of the ambiance of Point of Pines or Riverside that people are valuing. So this needs to be compared to not only what might happen, but what has happened on that site. And I think in that context, it's a significant improvement, not only for your community, but for the entire Revere community, for which this area is the gateway from the North Shore. It's the first impression that people have of Revere. The first impression is not Riverside, it is G&J. And we're trying to create a riverfront district of which everyone will be proud and which people can begin to use, including access to the waterfront for the people who have the easiest access to it in Point of Pines and the Riverside community, a riverfront they have not been able to enjoy for many decades.
And then just to build on top of that, I really did like your comment about history. History is something that's really important to us, and it's something that we didn't touch upon tonight. And you know, I don't think tonight is the appropriate venue, but we've looked very hard and long at the history of Point of Pines and of Riverside. We are taking a lot of inspiration to this building from that history. And I'm talking about what was here before, you know, 100 years ago. And it's something that we're going to weave in. And as we progress the design through site plan review, we're going to release more of it. I would love to keep an open dialogue, you know, with the residents who are interested, and keep them part of the design process, keep them updated in terms of what's going on. I think ultimately, the residents of Point of Pines and of Riverside are going to benefit tremendously from this project. Obviously, we benefit. We get to build a big building that's hopefully going to be profitable. That said, this is going to become a tremendous public asset and a public place. I remember I spoke to one resident who said right now one of her biggest concerns and issues is that during the summer months, people, after they kind of leave the beach or are heading home, pull off into the Pines just to watch the sunsets and to go there. And, you know, the sunsets are not going to get blocked by this building here. However, what we're going to provide is a place, a public place for people to actually not go into the Pines and come here and enjoy the sunset from the tip. Come here, utilize Gibson Park better. I mean, our goal here is to make this a 4-season place to come. And I know that's obviously challenging in our kind of climate, but we think we can do it. And we're actually trying to embrace some of those ideas into the building. So I think ultimately, I don't think a junkyard, a salvage yard belongs on any waterfront. And
no, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And I think you're going to be really, really happy. And if you are interested in terms of the design process, I'm happy to include you on a distribution of, as we move through the design, to show you what's happening and where we took inspiration from, because I think you will be proud of it. And as Bob mentioned, it is very separated. You know, we're talking about 2 or 3 football fields away from the nearest residential home. So that is pretty far.
Okay. Thank you, Damien.
I appreciate the comment.
Absolutely. I think leading with that, probably a lot of the Point of Pines and Riverside residents may have appreciated a little more, you know, knowing that that our history is incorporated and thought of. And I would love to see that and how that goes into the building, because I think, you know, again, like I said, I work in advancement in marketing communication. So if you do ever need, you know, some hands or eyes, like, I'm always willing to help out. And I know a lot of Revere history. My family has a lot of Revere history. But I think especially putting the history into this project would set you apart even more from these other buildings on Revere Beach and the Linway that are just basic and modern.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was blown away at what our design team found out and came up with, and kind of where we're headed with the design of this building, where we're hoping to head with the design of this building. And, you know, I'm happy to provide you with my contact information. And it's, you know, I'm at Redgate. You can just look me up on the email. I'm happy to keep you in the loop and get some suggestions. So we really appreciate the comment.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. I think with that, we have exhausted all of the hands that I have seen. And there are a considerable number of other questions that were reflected in the Q&A. And as Julie has indicated, they have all been recorded and will be addressed and summarized for purposes of the Site Plan Review Committee. It is also clear that there may be other questions that arise between now and when the Site Plan Review Committee begins its work. And for that purpose, we have created a web link, riverfront@revere.org, that will allow you to submit additional questions for our consideration and for reference to.
So I want to just, as Bob indicated, we do have a specific email link that comes to the Office of Planning and Development for riverfront@revere.org. If you have any questions about this presentation or anything that you forgot to ask and you need an answer, please send us that question. We'll do our best to answer it. We have several questions here tonight that were not answered because there's over 50 questions here. We're going to assemble them and we are going to get answers for each and every one of them. The other thing that I do want to remind everybody, this presentation is airing on Revere TV, and it will be at the top of their page until April 22nd. That is the date that our public comment period closes. I've asked that this video be pinned to the top of their Facebook page as well as the top of their web page, so it doesn't get lost in the additional videos coming out in the city. We appreciate everybody's time tonight. It has been very helpful, I think, for all attending, for everyone to ask questions and to learn more about the development. And we want to be able to work with you and everyone and answer the questions as they come up. So in closing, I ask that once again, if you have any questions, please send them to riverfront@revere.org. And we will be answering the questions. We'll probably put them up on the Revere.org page in a separate tab. Right now, the Riverfront has its own section on Revere.org, and we can answer the questions or post the answers to those questions on that page.
I would just add that the 2-week comment period that has been referenced is for our summary of your comments for review and reference to the Site Plan Review Committee. There will be numerous opportunities for commenting throughout the Revere state and federal process above and beyond what occurred tonight and what can occur in the next 2 weeks. But on behalf of the city as a whole, I want to thank both Damien and his development team, as well as all of the people who participated in this effort. I think it was a productive, a positive, and hopefully an informative meeting, and the beginning of a process, not the end of it. And I thank everyone for having participated.
And then, hey, quick thing, Bob. Julie, are you able to share this presentation with the community? I mean, I'm open to it. And could you also somehow provide my contact information on anything? I'm happy to speak with anybody if they have any direct questions. Happy to talk.
Yep. So I'm going to be, what I'm going to do in the Q&A right now is I'm going to post your email address. I'm also going to post our email address for Revere, Riverfront at Revere. I'm going to hold the meeting open for another 5 minutes for people to actually be able to copy those down. So just give me 1 minute and I will put those up for everybody to copy down, and feel free to email the city or Damien directly.
Appreciate it.
Excuse me, Bob.
Yes.
Elaine Hurley.
Hi, Elaine. How are you?
I'm good. I know it's late and everybody's tired of hearing everybody, but I did have a couple of things I'd like to say.
Sure. As long as Julie has kept it open for 5 minutes, we might as well take advantage of it.
The meeting is still open.
Go ahead, Elaine.
All right, Julia, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'd like to say that I've lived here for 45 years, and 35 of those years have been fighting development in the city, in our neighborhood, actually. And I want to say the first project that they wanted to put down there, Fowler's, was two twin buildings like they have over at the aquarium in Boston. Thank God we stopped it. I think this project is just the best thing to come down since sliced bread. It's beautiful. You come off that bridge, we are the gateway to the city of Revere. And you're going to see small scale, it's not that big, building. But you know, everybody's complaining about the traffic. Can I say that the traffic that's going to come from the building that they're doing on the Linway is going to make your hair stand on end? You think you can't get out of here now? It's not those 200 units over there, or 240 units over there that are going to bother us. It's the 3,000, 4,000, whatever they're putting on the Linway. And it's not fair because they're going to have this beautiful development over there. They're going to be all cleaned up, nice and pretty. And you guys don't want to have something pretty there? You don't want to have something nice when you come off that bridge that you look down and say, hey, that's my city. That's Revere. You know, very, very nice. So I'm listening to everybody tonight complain and don't complain. We could have had something really, really bad there. I think this is very nice. I think it's very tastefully done. I really think it's going to definitely be an asset to the city and to our neighborhoods. I think it's going to help Riverside. It's going to help us a little bit with our flooding. I don't think it's going to help a whole lot, but it's going to help a little bit. It's going to be a beautiful place for everyone to come, and they will come and sit and watch those sunsets because they are positively, absolutely gorgeous.
And Emily, I might just add that you know better than most that the city joined you in opposing inappropriate development on sites like the Riverside Boat Works. So it's not as if we have never seen a development that we didn't like. Development of this kind in this location, I think, is far different than what was proposed for the Riverside Boat Works. And we took our cues from you, and the inspiration for the master plan was largely a result of the activism and advocacy of the Riverside community, and we appreciate that.
These guys have been wonderful to work. I think they've been very transparent. We've worked with some guys that have been really hard to work with, and they wanted to just shove down our throats what they wanted to do. These guys have been great. They've listened, they've compromised. I mean, I think it's been wonderful, and I'm very happy with what's going on. Wasn't too happy about the parking, but I see you guys are adding parking. Because I do have concerns if they're going to park over here on the streets. I have one question. How long before the Rotary's turnaround will be built once the building's built? What's the difference? I know we have to wait for the bridge to go up.
No.
Well, actually, Emily, we don't have to wait for the bridge to go up. And since those transportation improvements are actually being sponsored by the city, I can tell you that we have already approached the Commonwealth of Massachusetts about funding for those transportation improvements. As far as we are concerned, they are an early action item. We have to get that done, not only for the benefit of the Riverside community, but for the benefit of access generally, including but not limited to the development site. So we are working very positively in that direction. It's likely we will be putting, with the support of Redgate, a proposal for development, for funding of the construction of that site within a matter of months. And we hope to get that underway sooner rather than later. Damien, you might want to add to that. I know it will precede the development on your site, certainly anything like occupancy. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to kind of show the commitment. So this is a proposal and a request that comes from the city to the state. However, the design is our responsibility. So we've actually already released the engineering team in order to do a design that is required for this submission in June. And the reason why we did that is because we got early feedback based upon an initial expression of interest to the state that this project is going to be viewed favorably. So we're really excited about it. We want this done before our doors open. And it's obviously something we'll coordinate, and we really think it unlocks not just our building, but it really unlocks the waterfront and ultimately, hopefully stitching back together, at least from a pedestrian and vehicular and bicycle standpoint, these two neighborhoods. So we want it done ASAP.
I think it's great. I can't wait. My daughter got hit by a car down here, somebody leaving the park when she was just 7 years old. And I wouldn't want to see any other mother go through something like that. But I'll tell you, it's going to be great not having those cars fly down here, down Mills Ave to go to the ballpark. It's just going to be wonderful. So I do appreciate it.
And thank you for your nice comments.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. And thank you, Emily. Okay.
We have both Nick Malaysian and Councilor Tony Zambuto, who both have their hands raised. So if I'll allow.
There's always time for the council president and Nick Malaysian. President Zambuto.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Everybody knows how I feel about this project, that I believe that this is transformational for the area. But I have to say, I've known Elaine Hurley probably 50 years. We go back a long way, and we fought a lot of battles together, a few against each other. However, when you win Elaine Hurley over, you've done your work. And she's absolutely right. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be transformational. And I know there's a lot of comments, and a lot of them are negative, but I've been involved in a lot of projects. One of them was One Beachmont, and I bring that up because that was a Damien project, and I took a lot of heat for supporting that. But now all the people that told me that it was going to be the end of the world are telling me what a wonderful project it is, and that there's no traffic in and out of it. And it was transformational to that little area. It cleaned up that mess. So this is, you know, for the naysayers, I just simply say, do you want to keep a junkyard there? And if you think that's a better use than this, so be it. But this is also the catalyst for that beautiful master plan, and it is going to be magnificent. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Nick Molason, we'll end with you, probably appropriately given the significance of this site from a conservation
Exactly. Thank you guys again for letting me talk. I just want to talk as far as conservation. This isn't just something that gets approved by Revere Conservation. Mass DEP is involved. I believe the Army Corps of Engineers is going to be involved. There's, you know, people have questions about wildlife and marshland and everything that's there now, and everything is going to be addressed. It's not just the Revere Conservation Commission. It also involves the state, many steps to get to where they need to get to be approved. So I just want to assure everybody that everything is going to be above board and done right conservation wise, as far as conservation when it comes to flooding. And I know Elaine Hurley said it, that it's not going to fix all the flooding in the Riverside, but it's going to fix some of it. It's going to help a lot. So I just want to let everybody know this is a multi-level process, and Damien knows this. He's been through it a million times already. It's not an easy process to get through as far as conservation and to deal with the state. But I just want to let everybody know I think this is a great project, and hopefully it comes to fruition soon. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nick, very much. Julie, have you posted everything? That you, yes, is that?
I think Councillor Powers wants.
Councillor Powers. Councillor will end it. Go ahead.
I want to close with this because I've been getting hammered down there by a lot of people who, half of them don't really understand what this project is all about. We've got a junkyard there right now. Over 100 cars sitting there. Tractor trailers pulling in all the time, spewing diesel of clouds into the air. People tell me that's what they want to see. Well, you're going to ruin my view. We're not ruining any view. Then people talk about building down there. I want to say one thing. When I first got elected, one of the first motions I put in was to change the RA district, remove the word special permit, so you could no longer build a two-family house in the Point of Pines or the Grove section of Oak Island. Just recently, about 4 years ago, I was successful because Elaine and a lot of other people have been fighting down there against overdevelopment. Well, guess what? We amended the development. All they can put down there now is 3 single-family homes. And what I'm looking to do right now is have the city purchase that property and put something in there that will work for the community. And as far as people worrying about traffic on Riverside, that's not going to happen. It's going to be changed, corrected, and people are going to go in through the Gibson Park entrance off of North Shore Road. So I just wanted to clear that up. Every vote I've ever taken in this city has been in the best interest, I think, of the city of Revere, and I've never shunned away from any controversy. I'll deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powers, and we will end on that note. Julie, have you been able to publish the information that you wanted to keep?
Yeah, so I posted both email addresses in the chat as well in the Q&A. And I believe Bob Dunbar has actually posted it on the Revere TV video website that is streaming right now, and it will also be on the Revere TV webpage.
Very good. And on that note, thank you, Julie, and all of the people who made this happen technically, and thank everybody who participated. I think it was a positive and productive and very timely meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.